Okay, so we're here in the first chapter, fourth chapter. We're going to go over values and data types. Again, if you're new to this channel and if you are not in the cohort, the curriculum link is in the description. You can click the link, it's free, and you can follow along as well. But what I want to make sure I really get you to hit home on this particular chapter is that we're going to be dealing with data types and we're going to deal with the values, helping you understand this. So I'm going to take my time to really point out things that, again, you may gloss over if you've already read the chapter, and there's some things you might missed. So let's get into it. Now, programs may be thought of as being made up of two things: data, operations that manipulate data. Now, understand, we're going over the data part here. This is what we're focusing on right now. It says this chapter focuses primarily on the first of these two fundamental concepts, which is data. The operations of that manipulating the data is going to fall in arrays, objects, functions, loops, all those different things. Those are operations that we use to manipulate data, and we'll go over that in future lessons. But for right now, data can be stored in a program in a variety of ways. The most basic unit of data is a value. Now, we have this bolded, so this is important for you to understand. A value is a specific, and that's one of those other words I have problems with, specific piece of data, such as a word or a number. Some examples are 5, 5.2, and hello world. Each value belongs to a category called a data type. We're just going over two data types right now in this particular section. We're going to go over all the data types later, but we're just focusing on numbers and strings for right now. We will see many different data types throughout the course, the first two of which are the number and string types. Numeric values such as 4 and 3.3 are numbers. Sequences of characters enclosed in quotes such as hello world are strings, so called because they contain a string of letters. Strings must be enclosed in either single or double quote. And then we have, if you do not understand, if you are not sure what the data type a value falls into, precede the value with type of. So this is where the type of operator comes in. Let me stop you here for a moment because I need you to understand something here. Understand when you hear the term high level programming language or low level programming language, we are talking about, when we say high level, we're talking about human readable. When we say low level, it's machine readable. Now, what does that mean? When you hear the term high level, put it in context. If we're talking about high level in computer development, we're talking about human readable. High level can mean different things in different contexts, but in this context, we're talking about human readable. And so what you see right here in this example, you see the human readable form. I want you to start thinking like the compiler. Now, this is what you see, but this is not what the machine sees. The machine sees values that are in binary code or hexadecimal. So that means all this human readable language has to be converted to machine readable language. So the compiler, it moves very quickly, where my eyes and my mind can only comprehend the concepts very slowly, but a computer reads it like that. It can go over 1 million lines of code very quickly. So here, I want you to understand, this is something you can see. You can see that this is a word, this is a string. But how does the compiler see it? These are broken down into binary code, but think like the compiler. You ain't gonna see it like the compiler, but let's think like one. Whenever you see these double quotes, and you have to have a closing, an opening and double quote, lets you know that it's a string. And whatever's inside of those opening and closing quotes is considered a string. If it doesn't have the quotes around it, it's a number. As you can see right here, you can see what it is. But what if this was inside of a variable? You won't know you may not know what's inside that variable or what data type it is. So that's why the type of operator is important in those cases. This brings up another point. What you're seeing here is primitive data types. Everything in JavaScript is an object except for primitive data types. I'm going to go over that over and over again throughout this course because I want you to get it in your mind. I want you to retain it. And what you see here is a primitive string. This means it's not mutable. That means it can't be changed. If it's mutable, it can be changed. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. It's mutable means that it can be changed. Unmutable means it can't be changed. So I sometimes get caught up on that myself. So you got to do it over and over again to make sure you get it. So that means primitive data types are unchangeable. You can't change them. Once they're set, they're set. But when you put a primitive data type inside of a variable, it becomes an object, and that can be manipulated. Remember, we're going to do operations that manipulate data. So I just want to kind of point that out to get your mind prepared for what's going to happen or come to you later on. So let's get back into the section. Now, not surprisingly, JavaScript reports that the data type of hello world is a string, while the data type of both 17 and 3.14 is number. Note that some JavaScript environments may print types, names, and strings with single quotes around them as a string with a single quote or a number with a single quote in a hello world. Like I said, that is letting you know in some environments. Not in all environments, but it's letting you know that it's a string. So don't get hung up if you see the quotes as when it gives you an output. But also pay attention. In JavaScript, you can use double quotes or single quotes. It doesn't matter. It will matter in Java, but it doesn't matter in JavaScript because it's dynamic. And you want to understand that because it can be very confusing. And it will be confusing until you get your head around it. Now, understand something here. We have a note. Notice that console.log type of hello world prints out string to the console. I'm going to break down console.log to you to make sure you understand this. Because remember, I said everything in JavaScript is an object. Well, console is an object. Log is a method. And I'll explain to you later. Because we're going to use the console inside of the browser to help us to do things, to manipulate things. So we don't have to go to VS Code right now. So it prints out the string to the console type of. Keyword is not printed to the console. The keyword won't be there. You won't see type of because it's smart enough to know that that's not what you want to print to the console. But notice a keyword here, prints. Whenever you see that word print, if we ask you a question to print something, we're going to want you to use console.log. We want to be able to see it. So when we say print, you're going to use console.log right now to print things to the browser, to the console. Makes sense? I want you to get that because that is going to help you understand how to solve problems. When we tell you to print something out, we want you to use console.log. We want you to, because that's what's going to print it to the screen, or we're going to output it to the browser, whatever program you're using. When we say we wanted to see it, if we want you to display it, we're going to use console.log. If we say print it, we're going to use console.log. So remember those words, print and display. And so here we say that this right type of hello world is an expression. We're going to go over expressions later on, but know those. Briefly, expressions are code segments that are reduced to a value. We will learn more about expressions soon. Now, we say that expression returns. That's another word we're going to use a lot. Return. We're going to use returns in our programs a lot. A value. It returns a value. We say that expressions returns a value. That is type of hello world. Type of, it returns the value hello world. So it returns a string. So it lets me know that this is a string. So type of returns the value or the type of value of this hello world, which tells me it's a string. Type of is a JavaScript entity known as an operator. It is similar to a function. It's not a function, but it's similar to it in that it carries out some kind of action, because functions and methods are actions. They're verbs. The syntax is different from that of a function. Notice, type of does not require parentheses. Log right here is a method. How do I know it's a method? Because it has parentheses. That's how you know it's a method. And how you know the difference between a property, you know the difference between the operators. But anything with a parentheses is considered a function or a method. Remember that. We will do more on operators in upcoming sections. There are data types other than strings and numbers, including objects and functions, which we will learn more about in future chapters. I will go over more of that as I feed this to you step by step. Right now, we're just laying the foundation. As we get that foundation laid, we're going to be able to build on top of it. So we're going to take our time to go through this. Now here we are. We have more on strings. What about values like 17 and 3.2? Do you notice something different about that? Look at it. They look like numbers, but they are quote in quotation marks like strings. Now we want to run the following code. We can do this right here inside of our browser. If you go here and right click, you can click on inspect. It opens up over here the inspection tool. You're going to use this a lot. Click on console. We're going to go ahead and clear that out. Just hit this right here to clear it out. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead. I'm going to hit this button right here. We're going to copy it to the clipboard, right click and paste it. There are shortcuts to doing this, but we'll learn it as we go forward. So now when I hit enter, it goes and gives me string and string. Now you're going to see undefined. It's because there's no return. We're not returning anything per se. When we want to create function, we want to return something, we won't have this undefined show up, and I'll explain that to you later. But as you notice, it's a string. Why? Because it's in quotes. If I hit my up arrow on my keyboard and I come back here and I get rid of the quotes, and I hit enter, now it tells me it's a number. Handy tool, right? We're going to be using the inspect tool a lot. Before you have to, sometimes you're going to test things and you want to test it out in the browser. The inspect tool does that for you. And also it has a whole lot of other features that we will go over later that you're going to need to understand. All right, so now we understand it. We tested it. We played around with it. Now, double quoted strings can contain single quotes inside them. As Bruce, you see the double quote. Think like at the compiler. You see that opening double quote, so you're going to be looking for a closing double quote. And it's going to ignore this quote right here, the single quote. And a single quoted string can have double quotes inside them, as in the knights who say not. Now understand something. If you open the string with a single quote, you can use the double quote on the inside because it's going to look for that closing single quote. But if you have double quotes here, you're going to have a problem because it's going to throw an error. Just like up here with Bruce, if I was to use single quotes all the way through, it's going to be a problem. It's going to give you an error, and I'm going to show you in a moment. JavaScript doesn't care whether you use single or double quotes to surround your strings. Once it has parsed the text of the program or command, the way it stores the value is identical in all cases, and these surrounding quotes are not part of the value. Now here we go. We're going to open up our inspect tool. There's a shortcut to open it up, but I'll let you figure that out. But right now we're going to use it as if we don't know what the shortcut is. And so I'm opening back up my inspector tool, and notice I still have the strings number still in there because I did not refresh anything, but I can close that out, refresh it by clicking on that icon. Now, something I want you to pay attention here. We noticed that Bruce's beard has a quote around it. So what I want to do is I'm going to console log that, right? Right click, paste. And I'm going to paste that in. Now when I hit enter, it's going to say Bruce's beard. Now you got to play around with the code. So let's go ahead and let me put a single quote right here. And let me do that first, because you can't mix match quotes. Let's see what happens. I get a syntax error because when the compiler sees that opening double quote, it's looking for a closing double quote. Get used to these error messages because they will help you identify and find your problem. So let's go ahead. Let me go all the way to the beginning. And then this time I'm going to put I'm going to have an opening single quote. I get another syntax error. What is this telling me? What is saying here? Syntax error, missing a closing parenthesis. What it's doing is, because I have this single quote in front of the S, it's closing it out and it's throwing me an error because it was looking for this closing parenthesis. That closing parenthesis wasn't there, so it throws an error. So that lets me know that I have a problem that I have to address. So let's go back to it. There's a way I can fix this. If I need to use double quotes or single quotes, I can just hit an escape. If I escape this, when the compiler sees that, it knows that, okay, that quote is not there. It's escaping it. So I've just showed you a couple of different ways to solve a problem. This is what we do as developers. We solve problems, but you got to know how to solve them. So you have to understand there's multiple ways of doing things. So I just showed you one simple way. Now, let's get back into our lesson. Now, because this video already on strings is running long, I'm going to stop it here, and then we're going to finish up and go over the numbers. Okay? Again, the more you do, the more you improve. See you in the finishing of this section.